everybody out there in podcast land. I'm Suzanne, and this is episode number 217 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is May 14th, 2025. And today we are talking with Nina in Oregon. No announcements, so we will get started. Hello, listeners, and welcome back. I have Nina with us on this episode. And how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Good.
So you are West Coast and I'm East Coast, so it's
Yeah.
afternoon here.
Yeah. Like lunchtime for you.
Yeah. And where do you live?
So I live in Colton, Oregon. So I'm in the middle of the forest out here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Colton would be kind of a small town, and it is south of Sandy for the listeners who would know. Um and so
Okay.
kind of on the Mount Hood side. Yeah, south of Mount Hood, southeast.
Okay. Oh, Mount Hood. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get into your how your remote location affects doing this business, and how you do that. So you actually reached out to me to come on the podcast, which I love. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how your eBay journey started and what got you to here?
Yeah. Yeah, I reached out to you because I was like, how does she? I started listening to your podcast and I really liked it. I'm like, I wonder how she picks listeners. And I really love reselling. I kind of started it by accident almost. I heard of eBay, so this was kind of the early 2000s, right around maybe 2000, 2001. And I went to a garage sale and this lady had this um china set and it was just right on her driveway, but it looked older, it looked really nice. She was getting rid of everything for a cheap price, and because she was going through a divorce, so she didn't care about any of this stuff. But I look at the set and I'm like, oh, she's like, yeah, that was some old set that was given to me. I'll give it all to you for $8. So I got
Oh,
this huge Noritake discontinued pattern set from like the 70s. I ended up figuring out what the pattern was. And I had been selling some baby clothes on the side from my kids. I had two young kids, and kind of just dabbling. And so I decided to start looking it up, and it was going for a lot more than what I expected. And I decided to part all of it out, which was really nice. So I turned the $8 into, by the time I was done, it was a little less than 400 for everything, but it kind of just inspired me to keep looking for things. I continued with the baby clothes path. I started getting into, I don't even know how I got into it, but I like to get into different things. So
mm-hmm.
I started buying like wholesale DVDs and exercise equipment and flipping that. Um,
Oh, okay.
and then just kind of, I took a break. We ended up moving, buying our first house, and this was like when I was way younger, this years ago. And I kind of took a pause for a little bit. But then my dad was into eBay, and
Mm-hmm.
he really liked going to garage sales and getting old fishing equipment. That was kind of his little thing. Fishing
Okay.
equipment, little knickknacks, stuff like that. And so I kind of got into it just a little bit. I always had an account. Um, we got this grand idea, he and I, one time, to go to Black Friday when Black Friday was fun.
Right. Yeah.
You could kind of sit outside stores. And we decided that we were going to buy, there were these really amazing deals on laptops. So we loaded up with the snacks, the drinks, the camp chairs. We sat there, told jokes, and we each got, because it was a limit of one per person, of these three different laptops. So we had six total. And then I ended up flipping them all on eBay. And we made all of our money back. My dad got a free laptop out of the deal. That was our deal for him, waiting out there with me in the cold.
Right.
And then making pretty good money. So I kind of just kept it going throughout the years. But I worked full time, became a single mom, ended up working full time, and then a coworker, she started selling on Poshmark. and she's talking about this Poshmark app. And I'm just kind of like, what's that? And and then I started talking to her about eBay, and she sort of showed me what she was doing. And then I kind of just one day I was like, I really enjoy this. And I just pulled open my closet and I just pulled out like 20 because she was doing clothes. And I had done baby clothes in the past, but I wasn't really into like clothes reselling. But I just decided to pull out like 20 items that I wasn't wearing anymore. And I just decided to get everything listed and started making sales again. Um, I went to the bins for the first time in my life and fell in love with
Ooh,
it. And so I
uh-huh.
just became hooked. So this was back in 2020, right before the pandemic. And then ever since then, I've been reselling clothing, mostly clothing, but I do dabble in other things consistently since then. So that's kind of the
Okay.
journey.
And so what was the year you started again?
Consistently in 2020. And
Okay.
then, but I first got started like back in 2000, 2001.
Okay. Okay. So, how many are in your household?
Right now, it's just me and my husband. So the kids are grown. And
Okay.
I remarried a couple of years ago. So it's me and my husband, and that's what I actually worked full time for a local school district up until last July, and then resigned from that to start pursuing, other goals and the reselling more full time because it was a part-time side hustle for me for the last several years.
So you're transitioning to full time.
Yeah, like full time, but not full time hours, that kind of thing.
Well,
You
like,
know how it
so
goes.
how many hours a day is full time for you or a week?
For it honestly it varies because we have other things that we focus on a lot. He has a construction business, so I help him with that. We do a lot with family volunteer work. So I would say I can sometimes I don't touch it one day and then the next day I'm putting a lot of time into it, and
Mhm.
so I kind of vary with my hours, but I definitely am in it. Um, Consistently every single week, consistently making sales, doing something, sourcing, reinventing. I love experimenting. I do a lot
Right.
of experimenting.
Well, and I think it's hard to track how much time you work on it because
It is.
some things you can be doing something else at the same time, or you're back and forth with it all day. So
Mm,
unless you really track it, and write it down, it's hard to know because people ask me that. Well, how many hours do you work on it? And I'm always working on something,
yeah. Yeah.
whether
Well, that's
it's
the thing is I'll be sending an offer or I'll, maybe rework a title because all of a sudden I've listened to like your podcast, for instance, and somebody said something. And then that kind of just sparks an idea. And I'm like, oh, I have an item like that. And I really like the keyword that they used. So I'm
Mhm.
going to go in and rework that title. I do stuff like that all the time. So, and sometimes it works.
Okay. Well, let's talk about like what kind of things you sell now and where you get them. And
Yeah.
since
So
you are a little bit remote, it's not, you probably don't just drop by the thrift store when you're out. You probably have to make a plan to go there.
yeah, I moved out here when I got married a couple years ago. My husband's from this area, so I was more in Gresham, which is pretty close to Portland. But it's a pretty big city in Oregon, and I was Goodwills, mom and pop thrift shops, the bins, garage sales mostly. Sometimes people give me stuff, or maybe I found it, on Facebook, or even sometimes free piles, I'll find things.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of my main. Out here, we do have everything from me, all the major stuff, we say it takes about 30 minutes to get anywhere, is about, what it is. But there are some, smaller thrift shops that I'll go to, like in Malala, which is south of me, or up in Estacada Sandy, which are north of me. And I'll still make trips to the bins, but I do a lot in Gresham and Portland area. So I'm frequently kind of in town. I call it I go in town now. It's my new
Hmm.
phrase. So I'm going to town. And that's when I'll stop by thrift shops and things like that.
Okay. Well, what are some of your look for items that you know are big profit or easy to sell or move fast?
I love clothing. Clothing is like my number one. I have been doing, I've experimented. I do like to experiment. I kind of have, I wouldn't say the luxury to experiment, but because it's not like my full-time income right now, I kind of have the freedom to experiment a little bit. So I've experimented with wholesaling clothes, which I didn't
Okay.
like as much. I mean, everything kind of flipped pretty fast, but I didn't really enjoy it. So what I really truly enjoy is I love finding more unique, I'm gearing into more unique vintage stuff. I'm trying
Hmm.
to find the vintage things, trying to kind of see what's selling vintage. I've been drawn to vintage a lot. And then I also kind of like your more bread and butter type, I call them staples. I love finding, like even vintage Ralph Lauren. I love linen. Linen is like the number one fabric that I gravitate toward.
Hmm.
So I do sell a lot of linen. I pick up a lot of linen. It's hard for me to let 100% linen go. Um, and so that's like my main. I do have like some shoes, purses, wallets, that kind of thing. They're not my absolute favorite, the clothing is, but then I started from your podcast, I started learning about other linens and crafting. And so I've actually been getting into picking up, the vintage pillowcases,
Hmm.
and I have found a few that I haven't got listed yet. I just recently found some blankets, some pillowcases. So I'm kind of experimenting with that and I enjoy that. Um, and then I love to actually sell like Wii video games, and I like
Oh,
to sell
really? Okay.
books and DVDs. So I will pick those up. But the majority of my stores close, but I do have those little items that I kind of enjoy picking up on the side and am starting to add to my store to build it up.
Great. Okay. Do you iron or press your linen items before photographing them?
Yeah, those things get steamed. However, that's
Okay.
my least favorite part. My least favorite part is the prep work and the measuring. So I
Hmm.
actually pay my mother-in-law or my daughter to do those for me.
Okay.
Because they don't mind. My daughter is she's got two kids with a third on the way. And so right now she's normally a CNA and working, but she has pretty tough pregnancy, so she's not on her feet as much right now because it's a pretty demanding job. So I kind of like will have her do that on the side, and she actually really enjoys the measuring part. She'll measure everything for me. My mother-in-law is really patient, so she's really good at the steaming and the ironing, and I'll have her check everything over for me, and she does a really good job. So that takes it off my plate, which lets me do the
Yeah,
stuff for
that's
me.
I tend to get a linen pile going.
Yeah,
I'll pick it up and yeah, I need to get the ironing board out and I like it really flat and crisp and I don't know, my steamer just doesn't get it the way I want it. But
yeah,
a lot of
it's
people don't
hard.
care. They just wear it however. And I don't know, I'm just a perfectionist and I like it to
Yeah,
look nice and flat and pressed. But yeah, it does kind of pile up sometimes. And then I'll take a day and a couple hours and get caught up on all that. So
yeah.
yeah,
I'm I'm glad they
it's a
do that.
popular fabric, especially, in the summer or warmer climates. This is breathable and um, it can be like dressy casual. So
Mhm.
um I find that I send a lot of that stuff to Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually
Yeah.
like to look at where my customers are coming from, and I tend to have a lot of customers purchasing from the East Coast and the South. That is
Hmm.
like my biggest customer base, which maybe it's because, I'm selling linen and things like that, more summery pieces, and the weather's better down
Hmm.
there.
Right. I shipped something to Pago Pago yesterday. You ever heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I couldn't tell you where it
It's
was.
American Samoa, which
Okay.
is in the South Pacific to the east of Australia, kind of near the Cook Islands.
Uh-huh.
And I'd never heard of it. It said Pago Pago, comma AS. And I was like, is this like a military address? Or so of course I had to Google it and figure out where it was, but it was a golf shirt with bowling pins on it.
Oh, that's
And I
fun.
thought, somebody in the middle of the ocean needs a golf shirt with bowling pins on it. So made that happen and it's on the way.
Speaking of golf, I actually really love golf, and so that's like my favorite men's thing to pick up.
Mhm.
Um, I happened upon like a Masters Tech quarter zip fleece.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, I know the Masters, my dad and I used to watch it and everything, but I hadn't for some reason heard of the brand. And it was that bright golfy green color.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, I bet you this is like, a good one. And I look it up and I mean, it flipped within like 24 hours I
Really?
probably could have got more, but it just went like that. So I'm always looking for like my Masters Tech
When
quarters.
was that?
That was last year.
Okay, because I see a surge in if I have any master stuff, end of March, like they're going
Mm,
to the masters and
yeah,
or they're going to a masters party and they want to wear things with that logo on it. But yeah, I do see an uptick in I think I sold two masters things at the end of March because it's usually the first week in April.
yeah.
And so for those out there that have any, just be aware that there may be a little surge in March when people have the masters on their mind.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So,
funny
yeah,
that you found it out there.
I know because I was looking it up and I was like, oh, okay, looking where it was from and Georgia and everything. And so I was like, wow. And I have not found another one since. I have found a polo and that is
Mhm.
it. And so it's a real hard find out here, but it was a pretty cool find. And I like the color. It was a very unique green.
Yeah.
It's like the when you get to the putting green, it's kind of like that's what I would call it, putting green green.
Okay. Right. Well, back in the day when I first started, I could get $50 or more for anything with masters on it with
Yeah.
the national logo. And at the time, and for a long time, they only sold their logoed items in the pro shop,
Mhm.
Augusta National. And so that's why you could get so much for them. But now you can buy them anywhere. You can buy them online.
Yeah.
They're not as, they're still as desired. They're just more available.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
as rare to find because I would get, especially if it was a Bobby Jones Masters
Mhm.
item. I remember selling some of those for $100 and they weren't even brand new. It was just
Yeah.
you couldn't get them anywhere. So yeah, the times change with that kind of stuff.
They do, and that's why I think I kind of enjoy, I don't want to compete on eBay. There's a lot of just the stock, the fast fashion, I guess would be the word.
Mhm.
There's a lot of sellers I've noticed on eBay that they're the wholesaler or they're the manufacturer or they're something and they sell them so cheap, you can't compete with that kind of stuff. So I thought, sort of the wholesale thing would be fun for a little while. But I actually enjoy finding unique stuff and I enjoy really good fabrics and things that you can't find everywhere. Um, Vintage is kind of where I'm really strongly gravitating toward. In addition to, my video games and things like that, but even that stuff is vintage that I pick up or hard to find.
Yeah, that's the thing with wholesale and drop shipping is if it's easy to do, you're probably not going to make much money
Right.
because if it's easy for you, it's going to be easy for everybody else. The challenge is getting out there and being a picker and finding the things that are both highly sought after and not plentiful.
Yeah.
So that is vintage right now, whether it's home decor, clothing, toys, collectibles. If they don't make it anymore, that's going to make you some money.
Yeah.
But you've got. I get this question all the time, and they're like, "Oh, I could get 1,000 of these um, iPhone cases." or earbuds. And I'm like, I wouldn't do it. I
Yeah.
just go to estate sales and go to garage sales and learn what to look for, because that's where you're going to find the more profitable items. I mean, there's nothing wrong with selling those wholesale kind of items. It's just the profit is so razor thin that and
Yeah.
for the time you're putting into it, it's all about your time investment. And so sell items that sell for more instead of
Yeah.
chasing your tail. um just for the listeners, like, if it's easy to get, and I'm not talking about, going to an estate sale and filling up your van with all the leftovers. I don't think that's easy because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
If it's going online and going to a wholesaler and ordering something and having your order done in 5 minutes and then it's shipped to you, and then good luck, because
Yeah.
how many other people are doing that exact same thing.
Yeah, and I think for some people that excites them and that's fine, but I just kind of found that it didn't really, make me feel excited. And if I don't feel kind of excited about what I'm doing, then it's going to get pushed to the side. I'm not going to want to, I don't feel the motivation to get those listings up. So I'm kind of like, just want to, stick to the things, especially now that I'm working on building this more than just a side hustle. Um, I, which I mean, side hustles are fine. That's one of the things that I wanted to mention to people. I'm going to veer slightly is that, everybody's reselling business has to be what it means for them. And, on YouTube, we can really, and podcasts, get into comparing ourselves with others. And I've kind of made that mistake, like, why am I not making $3,000 a week type situation? Um, but, behind the scenes, it's a ton of work even as a side hustle. It's a lot of work. And
Mhm.
so, making that much, takes a lot of effort. So kudos to them. But I was always happy with it covering like my grocery bill. And now it's doing more than that. And then maybe eventually this can be what, my husband and I do for retirement, supplement type income because, I mean, he's in construction, that's hard physical labor, but that's not going to last, his body forever. And so I kind of can't imagine that. So it'd be nice to have something that we can do together and he really enjoys it. So I think it's okay. I think we need more side hustle resellers, but do something that you do what makes you excited, what makes you motivated, and it's okay if you're only making enough to make cover your coffee habit, to buy some extra things, some groceries, or you can build it bigger if it needs to be full time for your family. And so that's why I'm like trying to figure out what is not only profitable because I do want to make my time count. So I do a lot of research. I really like your BOLO books that you put together. I just got the most recent one,
Yes, thank
and
you.
I love that, and I was like, "Oh, I need her other ones." But I have that in the car, if I'm out and about. Um,
Mhm.
because I'm starting to clothing is my main, but I'm kind of trying to figure out if there's other things I like. And sometimes I don't like it. Like I'll research it, I'll try it, and I'm like, that's not my thing. But then
Yeah.
I kind of try it and I like it. So like I like the linens. I also like I found some vintage like wallpaper, still wrapped in the roll, kind of
Mhm.
that 90s decor that people are gravitating back toward. Vintage lace and ribbons. I even like you had it was your podcast from April 23rd. The gal, I believe in Kansas, Rachel in Kansas.
Yes, Rachel, uh-huh.
Yeah, she does periodicals, magazines. And so I've
Mhm.
actually started picking up magazines too. Some are like very vintage cross stitch ones, but they're in like immaculate condition and because I love crafts. So,
Right.
I'm just kind of trying to build the things that I love, do my research, make sure, you do have to have sort of even though you want to be excited, you also can't necessarily fall in love with an item and just sort of waste your money and let something sit there and never let it go. Um, So it's kind of a balance between that. So I do a lot of research, but I want to pick up things that I love and I love to sell and that I'm proud of selling and happy to send to somebody else.
Hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right on the, you have to love working with it because it just doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
I decided I'm not really a fan of the dollhouse furniture. I bought a whole bunch of that. The Fisher Price Loving Family.
Mm,
And I thought, oh, this is small. It's not going to take up much room, but it was just kind of tedious taking the pictures and everything. And so I probably won't do that again. But then I bought this artist sketchbook, and he's, it's a student and he's learning to draw, but some of his stuff is just fantastic. It is very talented. And he died like 20 years ago. And I guess his family's just now going through his estate. But I bought his one whole sketchbook, and I'm taking the sketches out and selling them individually. And it's just very interesting to me. And I feel like someone who appreciates art will love these and frame them, and or who knows, put them in an art studio or a coffee shop, or I just feel like they could be used somewhere.
yeah,
I haven't sold any yet. I'm still getting them listed, but sometimes things take a while. But
they
I
do.
just was very interested in doing the research on those, and just some were advertisements, practice advertisements, like there's a Kelvinator refrigerator one, and like this box they call it. So that was just really fun to go through all of that. And when I was working on that one Sunday afternoon, like I completely lost track of time. I was like, how is it 5 o'clock? I thought I just say lunch. Like, how is it 5 o'clock? So yeah, and so you have to try different things to see if you're going to like it, because I wouldn't have dreamed that up out of the blue. I'm going to sell artist sketches. It just was in a estate sale, and I was like, that looks cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned that the other, a couple podcasts ago or so, and it actually made me think of my grandfather. He was an artist, like not sometimes he made, money from his art, as a graphic artist locally. But he has a ton of comic strips he's kept trying to submit to the Oregonian year after
Oh.
year. So if you're listening, Oregonian, but they rejected it. And I think probably because, my grandpa's sense of humor was, just not what was popular at the time. But I have his original comic strips, and he had a ton of them. And I have a bunch of original made for magazine little comics. You kind of almost like the Far Side type,
Mm-hmm.
just little humor. Some of it was political, some of it was funny, just topic of time for him. He was a World War II vet, so there's even some humor, not that that was a funny time period, but my family's very comical, so they kind of find humor in tough things.
Mm-hmm.
Just interesting stuff. And so I have all of his art. And I wasn't thinking about, I probably wouldn't put it on eBay. Not that that's not a good idea with this artist, because he would be proud to be published, in that way. So I think that's a really cool idea. But it actually got me to think about, I wonder if, I could do something with Grandpa's art. Right now, it's sitting in this cute little briefcase that I have, and just kind of inspired me. I was like, oh, yeah, good idea, Suzanne. So,
Well, if you're willing to part with it.
yeah, no,
um,
I would keep the originals. That's the thing, is I was like, what can I do with his art to kind of make him, he always wanted something published. So I was
mhm.
kind of trying to figure out, maybe I could do something with that
So is
sometime.
he like an illustrator?
Yeah, it was more, well, he did a lot. He did a lot of different types of art. He could do very realistic oil paintings and beautiful sketches. He would always send me personalized cards that he drew, but his top was illustrations,
Mhm.
so but
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for people with that talent who can just pick up a pencil or a pen and just draw something
oh
out of
yeah.
their head, and painting as well. Just I don't have the patience for it. I'm not talented that way. my mother was a great artist. She could do everything. She played the piano. She painted. She could draw, and my brother's talented like that too. But I just like it just doesn't come out of my head like that. I can't make that my drawing look like that thing over there.
Right. I love art. I love crafts, but I'm definitely not gifted like my grandfather. And then my
Right.
husband, you see the three guitars behind me. That's like three of, I don't know, 20, 25 some odd guitars in addition to other instruments. He's so musically gifted. Um, there's a local store called Guitar Center, and we went in
Hmm.
there one day and he picked up, I kid you not, every instrument. He went into the drum room, started playing the drums, the piano or keyboards, the ukulele, the guitars. And we just kept walking in room after room after room, and he could just play every single instrument. I'm just like, who are you? But it's definitely a talent I don't possess. I do a little bit on the piano. But I love that he loves getting into the reselling with me, which is when we met, I kind of told him, yeah, I do this thing, on the side. I do reselling, and he's like, wanted to know all about it. And then he just like got right into it with me. He started like looking for things and, finding things. And I always told him, no, don't bring anything unless telling me first. I don't want everything free or everything this or that. So for a while it was kind of cute because we would go to the bins and he would just bring up a bunch of stuff and I'd be like, no, no, no. And I felt bad telling him no. But
So what does he look for when you're out?
well, he's actually found some really good things. He's found some of my um I wouldn't say they were like huge sales, but really good flips. And it's because what I encourage him to do now is he'll still listen to me. Like if I'm watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast, he listens with me. Um, and
Mhm.
so he's actually, excited knowing that we're on to he's like, "Oh, you're gonna do great, have fun." But he has a different knowledge set and skill set than I do. And so I told him, when we're out, why don't you just start not that he can't look for the things that I'm currently looking for, but he's noticed some really great flips. Like one time we were at one of our new favorite thrift stores, and I walk right by it, and he goes, "Oh, that manual right there. That's definitely worth something." And I'm like, "What is it?" And it happened to be a video game manual for some video game I'd never heard of in my life. It was like 1.5 inches thick, this huge, almost like textbook manual with everything you ever wanted to know about this game. And so the store was having a 10 for $1 sale on books. So I got this book for 10 cents and I sold it in like 2 days. I think it went for like $55, and so
Oh,
it's just
good.
one of a good flip. And in the same trip, he found this, really good set of unopened Blu-ray. And that flipped almost instantly. He found, I think one of my favorites was, he does know that I like to look for vintage Polo Ralph Lauren or Ralph Lauren, and he found a men's. I posted this, I think, in one of your Money Making Mondays. I'm really bad about participating and commenting, but I read a lot. But I did participate in this one once because I was proud of it. It was a vintage Polo Ralph Lauren, 100% silk, black button down for men, and it sold in 30 seconds, or like not 30 seconds, 30 minutes. I'm sitting there, I posted it, then I'm continuing to list. I look down at my phone and I have my notification, and there it was. It sold right away. So I was like, oh, I probably undersold that. But, at the same time, I was so proud of that quick flip. So he's found a lot of things that flip fast. And for, to me, a decent profit. Uh,
Well, don't I hate it when sellers say this, like, oh, I probably priced it too low. You'll never know.
yeah.
You don't know. Um, Maybe somebody had an alert set up and they were notified as soon as you posted it and they paid full price and you made the sale and you got what you wanted and you did the research to price it right. So I'm on this crusade to help sellers take the pressure off themselves when this happens, because I've sold things like that. And, the community, when I post my sale, the community's like, oh, you could have gotten more. And um, that's okay. Everybody runs their business differently. And maybe I don't want to wait 3 years to get $50 more. I'm
Yeah.
happy with, I become more of a turn and burn and put the money back in the business and buy more stuff and keep it going, because we're never going to run out of stuff. And
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not one of those people that wants thousands of items in my home. That's uncomfortable for me. It makes me anxious. I don't like it. So
Yeah.
I'd rather just, anyway, I, I just think it's a mentality of, oh, you could have got more for that. And what's funny is the people saying that are the ones that never post their sales.
Yeah.
They're not sharing what they're selling, or are they even selling at all? So,
Yeah.
you know, I just don't worry about it anymore. If I pay 50 for something and sell it for 150, I'm happy with that.
Yep. And
And
I do feel that way too. But sometimes I think, I still fall into that trap of like the comparison to others, like, oh, somebody out there will probably think I undersold it. But like you said, it doesn't really matter. And we actually live in a tiny home. So I simplified like drastically. And we do have a separate storage unit on our property, but it's still limited in size. And I'm also an anti-clutter person.
mhm.
So I don't want to be in the business of collecting, so to speak, even though I love the stuff I pick up. I want to sell it. And so I'm not afraid of running, like I run a lot of sales. Um, just to get stuff moving, sometimes just to give the store like a little bit of, energy, so to speak, or they people talk about the eBay algorithm a lot, and I don't even know what is true and what isn't, but I do
There's
know
no
run
way for us to
sales,
know.
there's
All we
no
can
way. So
all we can know is really what eBay tells us. And
exactly.
are they telling us everything?
Right.
Or 100%? I don't think so. I don't think they want us to know. That's their business, it's their company. But rhythm, they're coming from a trusted source who is referencing where they got that information. Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of talk on social media about the algorithm. And it's like, okay, well, I always say, well, where did you read that? Where
Hmm.
did you hear that? Oh, they said that at, the eBay open. So it's not in writing. It was just something that was said. Well, okay, well, who said it? Are they reputable? And so just understand that, my philosophy is pay attention to what's working for you and do more of that,
Yep.
because that's working, at least for you.
And that's what I've been trying to be better at, even though experimenting can be fun, I'm trying to sort of hone in on what do I really love to do, what really works, what am I excited about, what's selling well that I enjoy selling. Because there's a lot of stuff that sells well, but I don't really want to pick that up. And that's why I think there's a lot of room in the reselling business as well. Like I have a friend who she likes to resell too on the side, and she said to me the other day, we were talking about thrifting, and she says, I love that you share, everything you do. Because I was like, oh, you've got to go to this new thrift place with me. She's like, I love that you're not like competitive or keeping things to yourself and not sharing. And I was like, well, you and I have different interests. And even if we had the exact same interest, I'm only one person and I can only list so much and I can only sell so much, So to me, I'm just not competitive that way. I'm competitive against myself. I want to do better than I did last month. And so I do track my numbers. I do get a little nerdy, I guess you would call it. Not that I think it's nerdy, but nerdy is a compliment for me. But I get a little
Yeah.
nerdy and I get into my numbers and I have a spreadsheet that I made, and I do like to, you know, try, and I mean, obviously you should for business and tax purposes, but I actually enjoy the tracking part and just seeing like, what is my average sales price? Did I bump it up? Did I sell more? Did I make more profit? How am I doing? Kind of not only keeping an eye on my spending habits, because it can be thrifting is the easy part. But
Yep.
also, I love to set goals. I am very goal oriented. And so, one of the things that I started thinking about is instead of how many a day I would list goal or how many a week, it's let's have more of a goal of how much, maybe I profit weekly. Let's start achieving more like tangible goals that kind of count versus I could list 100 items and sell nothing and
Hmm.
still have achieved a goal. But, if I'm not selling things, I'm just in the business of listing. So I kind of, that's my new mindset is I'm gravitating toward competing against myself, trying to improve, and also my goals being more, um, I guess meaningful would be the right word. I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but meaningful to me in my business.
Right. And attainable.
Yeah.
Some people list a dollar amount every day, like
Hmm.
$100 a day. And so it could be one thing, it could be five things, but that's what they're looking at is filling their store up with a dollar amount.
Yeah.
So, and I've done some bulk buys recently and stopped listing the items because they're not selling very fast. So, okay, time is better spent listing this over here that is selling. And I'll get to it. I'll get around to it. Like those coffee bags I bought from a guy in the coffee business. I've sold about five of those. And like they didn't sell for a month and then all of a sudden they're starting to sell now and I'm like, well, why is this? What is going on? Because they're going all different places. I'm like, are these for wall decor? Is this for plants? Because like now we're in the plant season and maybe the people use them for that. um is it for the family reunion sack race?
Yeah.
That's happening over the summer, the family reunions. Like what is it that triggered these things to sell? So as soon as the people receive them and leave feedback, I'll be like, hey, I'm curious. What are you
Yeah.
using this for? And that'll shed some light on it because, some things can be seasonal. Things
Yeah.
you sell all year, but sometimes it's a seasonal thing. So I always ask that question so I can be a better seller and
Mhm.
provide products that people want when they want them.
Yeah. I wonder also, wedding season's coming up too, and there's a lot of rustic, vintage wedding themes.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
for our wedding, I was on the hunt for really old galvanized giant milk, containers
Okay.
because I wanted them for some of the bouquets,
Mm-hmm.
because I had a very rustic theme, and, of course, when I look for something, it's not available, but I happen to have a friend who had parents who had, like, several, at their house, and so they let me
Mm-hmm.
borrow, which was nice, but that would have been something, I would have eventually searched for probably on eBay, probably be hard to ship for somebody, but, it's a pretty
Yeah.
big item. But, yeah, it
Right.
that was my particular hunt for, and I got married in the summer and I know like June,
Yeah, that's
July.
a great point. And
Yeah.
these that have been selling have the little cartoon, call them the Valdez. So I don't know, that is very wedding-ish, but
Hmm,
that's the one that's selling is with this little cartoon coffee man on the front of it. So I don't know.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
that's why I bought them was because that one design caught my eye, but it was a bulk buy. I took all of them, but yeah, eventually everything will sell. But yeah. So okay, well, you have any sales you want to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, obviously that Noritake set, like I'll never forget just that set, and it's funny because I'm so happy that every piece survived shipping. I
Mm-hmm.
did pick up a little bit of China recently, kind of thinking about that. And then I decided, I don't really want to ship breakables. I don't even know how that old set survived. I don't even think I packed it the way I would pack something today. But that's something that's just not that I'm looking forward to. So I did buy some recently though, but they haven't quite sold. So I was like, yeah, that's not my thing. But the laptops, that was fun. My vintage, the Ralph Lauren, I've sold that. And then there was also the one thing, the Goodwill I've heard about. everywhere. The prices are just skyrocketing, and that's true here too. The bins are really good, but the regular Goodwills, those can be hard. So that's why I kind of started to learn other things instead of the popular brands. I'm learning things that, Goodwill's not, it's not really on their radar. And one of these things, and I've noticed, and I don't even mean this in like a mean way, but sometimes I've noticed, that things that just aren't super pretty or that I would wear sell really well. And I was at a local Goodwill and this one, like, I don't know if it was it ended up being a dress, but I was like, what is that? That just looks so odd, different. So I pick it up off the rack and it's this brand ended up being Injiri is the brand, and it is hand woven. I did a bunch of research on it. Hand woven, 100% wool items from India, and they sell
Mhm.
like retail $800, $1,000 a garment
Yeah, I've seen those.
because
Uh-huh.
it's handmade. And so it was 6.99 at the Goodwill, and I flipped that very quickly within a few days for I think $290. Um, that was just like I was like, "Wow." And I also picked up a linen, it was from Japan, and I do not remember the name. I wish I did. It started with a Y, but it was 100% linen, and it was just this almost like a flour sack, like giant flour sack looking garment with some interesting color block, handmade, most likely, that kind of thing. And that flipped really well, but it wasn't on the Goodwill radar. So I like to look for those little one-off items that are unique. And then at the bins, I found a men's Burberry coat. And I kind of was
Uh-huh.
like, why are people passing this up? Is this a fake? So I actually sat on that
Or is something wrong with it that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, I scoured
That's what
their
I
thing.
usually do.
And I'm
Like,
like,
oh,
you
no
know what?
wonder this is still here.
Taking it home
Yeah.
and I'm doing my research. And it was really hard to do the research, but I wanted to make sure it was 100% authentic. And I sat on that thing, I think, for 6 months. And I continued to research. And then I found out it was from the men's winter 2008 line, but it was in immaculate condition. It was a car coat, and I'd never really heard of the term car coat before. I don't know why, but I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I finally, validated that it was authentic. I listed it, and it sold very quickly. It was really hard to value it just because Burberry can be all over the place. So I
Hmm.
did what I thought I would be happy with. I would have even taken less, but I ended up selling it. I believe that one was 350, and I got it at the bins and I sold it to some gentleman in Brooklyn, New York with like a very Italian sounding name. So I just, picture in this, big tall Italian guy wearing this really nice Burberry car coat, just so I just kind of sometimes picture like what are people using this for or how are, they wearing it, and sometimes I pick up pieces that I just love and I can't wear it or it's not, my size or anything, but I'm always trying to like picture how they would wear it and sort of I like to sometimes market it that way, so to speak. I
Hmm.
found some really beautiful dresses that it's just like somebody has to go out on the town in this dress. It's just beautiful, 100% silk. It reminds me of, maybe a famous Hollywood actress or something. And so sometimes I'll kind of say that in my listings, just kind of the vision of the garment, hoping that somebody will pick it up and wear it. But yeah, those are kind of the things that I get excited about. The Masters Tech, um, the Wii games. I just picked up one for free this weekend, and it ended up being like a really like very popular selling game that sells, I mean, for a pretty decent price. So I'm excited about that one, and I already have a lot of interest on it. So it's like, oh, that's cool. I love just finding those little things and then just turning around and flipping them. And golf DVDs. I actually found recently there's a little bookstore that I like to go to, and they sell their DVDs pretty inexpensive. And I found a set of six wrapped, 100% new golf instruction DVDs. It was all about,
I've sold some of those for like
yeah,
$40. Yeah.
yeah. And so I got the set of six and turn around and flip those. Of course, like you said, it's golf, season, Masters. That's sort of on a lot of people's brains. And so I was like, oh, that's fun, sending that to somebody who wants to improve their golf technique. So yeah,
Yeah,
those
so
are
you're
kind of
just
the things.
all over.
I am a little bit,
It's
but
okay. That's what it takes.
yeah.
So we have made it to the end. Do you have any last words for the listeners?
Yeah, I think because you mentioned, just one of my best tips. And, I think one of my best tips is just to have fun. Like, have fun with your business. Yes, you want to make money, you want to do research, have systems, things like that that make it a profitable business. But if you're not enjoying it, it's kind of like, it's almost, what's the point? I think you need to find what works for you, enjoy what you're doing, don't compare yourself with others. Learn from others. That's a big key. Um, but don't compare yourself necessarily with others. And I think that kind of makes it, just an enjoyable, whether you're doing it part-time, side hustle, or full-time, especially if you're doing it full-time. You really want to enjoy what you're doing.
Challenge you to post more of your sales on the group. I
Yes.
actually have that on my calendar for every Monday, so I don't forget to do it. But you can post anytime. It's just it starts on Mondays. Um, so you can see more about what you're saying. Thank you for reaching out and coming on the podcast. I do appreciate it, and it was great to meet
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Yeah, it was really fun.
Okay, great. Well, have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
My guest next week is a great lady and longtime eBay friend, Kathy in Wisconsin. She was actually one of my coaching clients back in 2010, so we have been friends for 15 years. And her life has taken many twists and turns with eBay running in the background much of the time. So she has a lot of wisdom to share. Thank you for supporting this podcast, and I will talk to you next week. Happy selling, everybody. Bye.